So today we're going to be studying turns and rivers, and how to, you know, because ultimately playing turns and rivers is how you, but playing them well is how you generate a lot of expectation. I mean, pre-flop and flop are most important, but like I think in practice people play turns and rivers so poorly. If you're well studied in those lines, you can do really well. Um, so the main thing you want to be focusing on when studying post flop play or specifically turns and rivers is you want to gain an intuition as to how good certain runouts are for each player. Um, and this is going to vary pretty heavily depending on the line. Like in the check line, there's not going to be nearly as drastic swings in equity for each player on different runouts. Like if we take a board like 10-5 deuce, which is like imposition has a slight equity advantage on this board, but it doesn't smash either player. Um, and we just like take a look at the check down line on like a brick run out. You see like equities like run pretty close. And like even on yeah, so like in the check down line, the ace is obviously like uh really nice for the imposition player. Um, just because like they should be checking back a lot of ace high, whereas like uh and then like if you look at the check back line, um the 10 is slightly better for the imposition player because none of the air from out of position improved. So imposition still has like a damning equity and like high card hands. Um, whereas like in the bet line, if the turn's a 10, this is much better card for out of position. So the quality of run out is going to depend greatly on the line, which like I don't think that's any secret. But my point is like when you study post flop play, this is a lot of what poker is. It's like understanding uh quality of runouts and like how much a turn or river improves either player. Um, so if you're studying these different lines, you just want to get an overview of this. So like study the check line and then take a look at the turn report. Take a look at the equity for each player. This isn't going to tell you everything that's going on in terms of strategy. Um, it's not going to tell you a ton in terms of strategy. Like you're just going to study the GTO line, but this is going to give you a good idea of like general betting frequencies because like the 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 turns out of position bets the most are the turns that are best for their range, like the 6 and the 4 where they have the most equity. Because you can see like if I sort by check frequency as I go up, the the equity goes down and the checking frequency goes up. Um, and this is like the quality of turn is going to vary wildly in the bet line. Look at the turn report. Um, so like in the bet line after it goes bet call, the like in a vacuum, um, the out of position player's equity is going to improve greatly on the turn. Like out of position has like averages out to 55% equity after check calling because out of position can't check call pure air, but in position can bluff pure like overcard air on the flop. Like in positions betting like king queen off, queen jack off, queen nine off. Um, whereas like out of position isn't just like or and like jack four 10-4. There's like out of position isn't just like check calling Jack 4. So they fold out a lot of their air on the flop. So like on a pairing turn, these turns are much better for the caller on the previous street. And then the other thing is understanding. So like another thing is understanding polarity. I mean I discussed this at length in the overbetting the flop tutorial. But the bet line is going to be inherently like a betting range is going to be inherently more polar than a checking range. Because like a checking range is built around hands that have an incentive to check back and see a turn. Like a set has very little incentive to check back and see a turn. Because they want to get as much money in as possible. Whereas like ace 9 is a hand that's it only has one overcard and doesn't have a lot of backdoor stuff going on. So yeah, and then if you hit a 9, you're typically gonna want to be waiting till the river to value bet that because it doesn't need as much protection as like if you bet ace 6 and hit a 6, you might want to, or if you check back, hit a 6, you might want to value bet ace 6 for protection, sort of thing. Okay, so yeah, and this is gonna vary on board type because like on let's see, this is the connected low database. I'm just kind of giving you guys like a general overview, and then we can like dive into some boards. So like on 5-3 deuce, board's gonna be, you know, better for the out of position player in the sense it like relatively, right? Because it's gonna be very few boards that like the big blind caller is gonna have an advantage on. Like 5-4-3 is probably like the best one. But after it goes check check on the flop, so the equity is around 50%, and then on this board, it's gonna be slightly lower. So like on low connected boards, out of position is gonna do slightly more betting, but it's also very run out dependent. So like on connected low boards, there goes bet call. Turn 10. Take a look at a slightly lower 7-3 deuce maybe. These are very similar boards. I suppose. Like out of position should be check raising a straight. Yeah, okay. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. So you just want to get a general idea of like in the check check line. So here's what I would do. Go to the check check line, go to the turn report, and then look at the equity for both players. So like you can see like 4-liner turns are really good for out of position because like they have more low cards. A spade is generally good for out of position. Because in position is going to be betting more than checking with flush draws. Generally the case. Yeah, and then like the worst turns for out of position are going to be kings. And then if we look at the bet line, see the equity shift up a good bit. I mean, if this is an average across all turns, this is like quite a massive shift in equity. And then we can see like in the bet line, the spades are actually bad for the out of position player. So then what do we expect? The spades getting bet more often, right? So this is sort of the thing you guys should be looking for. And looking at looking at like overall frequencies and like equity shifts in each line. You can see it goes from like in the check line, it was like right around 50, and then in the bet call or in the check call line, it goes up to like 55, and then in this board, well, let's look at like a higher board. 6-3, be like half pot or check. It's right around 50 in the bet line or in the check call line. Gonna be slightly better, like 56. Yeah, so now it comes down to like why are specific turns and rivers or runouts in general better for one player than the other. Um, a lot of it's going to be intuitive, but like in game, it you might not quickly and swiftly piece together that in the check line, spades are actually good for out of position, like on the spade flush draw boards. So like getting those sorts of ideas down off the tables is quite good. And so like on runouts where like on runouts that are significantly better for one player than the other, uh specifically where one player has like a significant equity advantage, there's going to be a lot of bluffing going on with their air, right? Because like if it checks down to the river on this board, give it a more brick run out, like a 10 10. You can see like in position is going to retain their equity from pre-flop, so out of position can't just like bluff all their air. Whereas if out of position has like a significant equity advantage, let's get a slightly better or yeah. Then it goes check check. You can see out of position's equity is you know, up almost to 65, and like it classifies no made hand as like king high, but like king jack has showdown value, so it's really like anything without showdown value is bluffing. King jack still wins quite a bit, but even some king jack is bluffing the river. So that just goes to show like how much bluffing out of position gets to do on these runouts, because of how good this runout is for them. So like 58. But this is a remember, like we said, when there's a flush draw on the board and imposition checks back, flush cards are better for the other player. So this is like a club run out. There's a turn flush draw, imposition checks back, and now there's another club on the river. So this is a decent run out for out of position, and they just bluff everything. Everything that is worse than ace high, they just bluff, and then like even some ace high, like uh yeah, like even ace 10 with a club starting to bluff. So yeah, it like a hand as high as ace 10 is bluffing the river here. That should tell you something about like the quality of run out. And then if you check look in the check line, you can see like tons of airs checking back. Like even like 10 high is going to be checking back. Some 8 high stuff. Um, yeah. So, anyone have specific questions about any of this? No? Okay. Um, but yeah, and then a lot of check down lines. Out of positions, just gonna have to check down and lose with a bunch of air. So this is a check down line. Out of position, just checking and losing with 9-8 or 8-7, 8-5. So this is just like there's a significant difference in the check down lines and the bet check bet lines. And learning like gaining an intuition for how different runouts uh, affect each player's range is quite important. Yeah, you can see on this very brick run out. So this is about as brick of a run out as it gets. Um, like on runouts, so pairing turns are unique in the sense that, or pairing turns and rivers are unique in the sense that it doesn't improve any of either player's air. So after it goes check check and the turns a 9, um, out of position is not like it went check check, so they're not narrowed to any certain region of their range. Whereas like if they like called a bet on the flop, they're gonna have more 9x than they are like anything else. Like they could check raise some queen x, probably not folding bottom pair, but like middle and bottom pair they're gonna have a bunch of. So like pairing turns, it would make sense that um it's a much better card for out of position. Not to mention they called a bet on the flop, so they don't have straight air. Uh, they're gonna have some sort of equity. Um, but yeah, like on the 9, it doesn't improve either player's air. So like the imposition player is gonna retain their equity from pre-flop. You can see on the flop, imposition has like a bit over a 6% equity advantage on the 9. It's gonna be similar. So like on these pairing runouts, um, yeah, out of position is just gonna have to check down and lose a bunch. Check and lose like 5 high or whatever. So, um, yeah, sort of the idea. This makes some sort of sense.
In some of these spots, like if you hit check and go to the 2, um, like no, on the river, I mean, like
Yeah.
the in the example you showed right before in like the check bet check line, the bet frequency was like 55% or so,
Okay.
but it was still bluffing all the air. But in this line, checking around like 60%, so like roughly the same, but then almost no air is really bluffing, and it's just betting like a ton of top pair, middle pair, and some weak pair. It seems like it just barely even bluffs here, but then it is like super unbalanced. Like top pair is almost never in his checking line, and middle pair is almost never in his checking line.
You mean in the bet check bet?
Like, well, in the bet check bet line, you were stabbing a ton of your air, and almost it was almost pure. And then in like this line, it's just kind of peculiar to me that top pair, like our checking range will be just completely devoid of top pair and middle pair, and it'll just be all like weak pair and like total air. Is there like a reason for that? Because we
In
seem
the
so unbalanced.
sorry,
In
in
the
which
line we're
line?
looking at right now,
Oh,
in the
okay.
line we're looking at right now,
Uh-huh.
you just like don't ever bluff.
Yeah, yeah. So that's kind of the point. Is like this run out in position like retains their equity from pre-flop. So out of positions like at a significant advantage or disadvantage. So
Right.
they can't bluff a lot.
I would have expected it to like they just wouldn't be able to bet very much, but here like our check range is just completely just it's just complete air. It's just like a total give up line where I would think that if we were at an equity disadvantage, we would be like checking a ton with even some of our like value here, which is basically top pair, and then facing a lot of aggression. So our top pair would make more money by just checking. But for some reason here, we're just checking only basically to fold. And then top pair
Well,
is just always betting.
so on this run out, the checking range is going to be a little bit of top pair, but it's going to be a lot of hands that just have incentive to check down and then see a river and like try to check down, get to showdown. So on this river specifically, the imposition range, like they're just going to be checking back a lot of like king high stuff that's trying to get to showdown, right? If you look at
Sure.
yeah, like there's just going to be a lot of checking down like with king high. Um and you like yeah, so like the air doesn't really need to bluff, and like if you get bet into um yeah, you can like raise top pair now. Um
We just like almost never have top pair though once we check. And we just like way are drastically over folding.
mhm.
Like against the 50% bet, we were folding like 60% of the time. And I guess I'm just confused why top pair doesn't make more money by just checking and then getting bet into and then raising rather than betting itself on the river. I don't know if like I'm making sense, but
No, I
it's
see what you're saying, but like the check back range on this turn, it's gonna be a lot of like king high stuff that's trying to show down, right? And then on
okay.
this river, remember what I said about pairing turns, it improves
Hmm.
literally nothing. That would be different on like a queen, probably. Yeah, so like you're checking a lot more top here.
Okay.
Because then you get bet into with queen X or by queen X.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense.
Hmm.
That makes sense.
And then so this extrapolates to like flop over bet lines, right? Because we know like these lines are very polar. So like on flush cards, this is going to be like very good for out of position. You're going to see out of position start to donk. See, like on the four of spades, out of position is like almost donking their entire range after calling a flop over bet. Their range is like severely narrowed to like you can see like even a lot of top pairs starting to fold. So they're like very narrowed to like decent top pair, two pair sets, and flush draws. See, like flush draws is like the hand class that like mostly never folds. And then say the turn is a 7. Remember, like out of position folds a lot of 7x on the flop. So this is like much different from a queen. On a queen, out of position is going to be, this is like a much better card for out of position. On the 7, yeah, in position is still going to be making all their value bets with ace, king, aces, king, queen, all that stuff. But after imposition checks back, the turn, out of position is going to have like a very significant equity advantage because this is like after you overbet the flop, the flop bet range is like very polar. And when they have whatever value they have on the flop, they're mostly just going to be betting the turn. Because they're not overbetting like king 6 or whatever on the flop. They don't have like top pair that they're overbetting the flop just to like check back the turn, or like very much of it. They have like some king jack or whatever, but like you can see like very few combos. So then after it goes check check on the turn, out of position has like a significant equity advantage, and they're going to be value betting very thin. You can see like queen deuce is just like pure value betting. It's like the imposition range is mostly just air. See like checking very very frequently. You bet quarter alpha is 1/5, and they're folding almost 50%. It's just a give up. Is this making some sense? Are there any questions? Um, that's sort of the main thing I wanted to brief you guys on, and then the next thing is I'm just gonna pull up 3-bet pot because 3-bet pots are going to function pretty differently. Um, so let me some versus button. This is 9 7 deuce two tone. Cutoff versus button. So this is the imposition strategy. So like yeah, the main size here being half pot. So after it goes half pot call, and then the turn is the 9. You would think like typically this is a very good card for out of position, but really you can see like it's not um like good for their equity in the sense that in position still has like all the overcard bluffs, but out of position doesn't have any of the air. But it's not going to be such a good turn that out of position can start donking a bunch, because in 3-bet pots, the pre-flop caller is uniquely weighted towards pocket pairs and suited broadways. So cards that don't complete lots of straights, two pairs, and sets simultaneously typically aren't going to be donked, and the equity shift isn't going to be as drastic. Not to mention, there's not going to be as much donking because the SPR is lower. But it's more because um, there's going to be less single pair hands just naturally in 3-bet pots. On like a 7, a similar thing going on. Out of position still has like all these pocket pairs. So yeah, it's gonna function much differently. King out of position equity is like total dog shit now. Position betting. So yeah, and then in like check down lines. So Money, what do you think? Like on a turn deuce, what do you think happens? What do you think happens on the turn
For who?
for out of position after he goes check on 9-7 deuce?
I would expect a lot of checking. The 2 isn't very good for us, and the button will maintain his advantage through to the turn.
What did we establish yesterday regarding imposition 3-bet pots about overpairs on the flop?
They're just betting pure.
I mean, not pure, but a lot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
So
betting very, very often.
yeah.
And
So
that's a
after
huge part of it. I see what you're saying. Yeah, that's a huge part of his of the button's value range. And so when he doesn't have value, the check line is the give up line. I know what you mean. Yeah. And so
mhm,
the 2 turn will actually be betting quite often.
mhm, yep.
Yeah,
So
because once the button checks back, it's just I don't know if give up line's the correct word, but so much of his value, i.e., over pairs, bet the flop. So
mhm. Yeah. So after he
yeah,
goes
I
check on
remember
the
that
flop,
conversation.
yeah. So
I was too focused on the 2.
no, I get it. So like after he goes check on the flop, the out of position equity like it's like, greatly improved. And that's generally going to be the case after it goes check on most cards. The 9, same thing, just a range bet for out of position. And then on the 10, that's where it starts to get a bit more even.
I would
Out of position.
imagine the Jack plus are checked more and more just
Mm-hmm.
because
Yep.
and then like it'll be kind of like progressive the higher it gets, I would guess.
Yeah.
Maybe not the ace so much.
Well,
Okay.
no, I
Oh,
mean the ace. Well, in this configuration, um, the ace is going to be particularly good for imposition, for two reasons. Because like pre-flop imposition, three bets like as low as ace deuce suited. So
that makes sense. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so yeah, basically any turn that's not a Broadway card is going to be bet very high frequency for the cutoff.
Hmm. Yeah. So yeah, a lot of this just comes from like understanding the different lines. So like on this board, this is much different than a board like 7-6-5, where out of position can have like straights and sets and two pair and all that stuff. Because then in position is going to be uh checking back over pairs more often. So it's like not a range bet, but like out of position will still be betting real often because it has so many strong hands. But um, yeah. Okay, here's 9-8-7. Our position is going to be donking this board a bunch. Then M position is going to be checking back over pairs a bit more often. But I'd still imagine the turn is like a pretty high frequency bet. The sim isn't as good, but yeah, you can see like out of position still betting a bunch. So really the main ideas that I wanted to communicate. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording and then we can discuss a bit further.